Welcome everyone to the Mind, Body, and Soul television show coming to you live from our internet television studios here in Denver, Colorado. And we are also streaming on YouTube Live as well as Google Hangouts and at ConsciousEvolutionMedia.com. I'm your host, Coach Steve Todd, and also the founder of Conscious Evolution Media. And this evening we have a wonderful guest with us. His name is Dr. Barry Foss, and he is joining us from Australia, and it's actually Saturday there. So I'd like to know the lottery numbers for tonight. If you could get that for me. So our theme today, welcome to the show, Barry.
Thank you very much, Steve. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And the theme of the show for this evening is how to manage through human design. And the first question of the show, this is always this way, is, Barry, if I took away, and I didn't say really some of your titles, but I'm going to say it now. So Dr. Barry Foss is a prior management consultant. Currently he is a human design consultant, and probably many other things. He has a doctorate in electrical engineering, and if I took away all these titles and any other titles that if anybody ever called you, like father, friend, you know, a colleague, and the titles go on and on. If I took them all away, what's left? Who is really Dr. Barry Foss?
Well, for one thing, I'm not psychic. And oftentimes people think that there's a certain psychic part to human design, and that's not the case. And that's one of the reasons I think as an engineer I have come across pretty well with people. With taking away all those titles, I'm not sure what would be left. I can tell you something about my design, other than the fact that I have been a pretty good teacher and coach, and have helped people with their lives.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. So I think one of the most important things would be, just to start the show, is for you to explain to our viewers what is really human design and where did it originate from?
Human design is really it's a self-awareness and life strategy system. It was discovered in 1987. It was channeled off the coast of Spain by a Canadian person, and it took him a while to document it all, but he put it together, and is then been delivered to many people around the world. There's thousands and thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands of people now, who have had their human design sessions since that time back in 1987. Mm-hmm. It's a self-awareness and life strategy system, and it basically is based upon your genetic imprint that you get at the time of birth. And human design will describe some of the basic characteristics that you get when you're born, and stay with you for your entire lifetime, and determine how you operate, how you deal with other people, basically your overall consciousness.
Okay. Okay, great. So when you said it is channeled, it was channeled. So we may have people that are viewing the show that may not know what that exactly means. Would you like to explain it? What channeling means?
Well, in this particular case, this individual had an experience where there was some awareness that he had that came into his brain, which he called the voice, and this happened in the evening in January of 1987, and continued for several hours. And the origin of it isn't clear. It's somewhere from the universe, but that's why we call it being channeled. It came from the universe.
Somewhere out there.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So when did you take this on, Dr. Barry, in terms of in terms of starting to practice this? How many years have you been practicing this?
I've been involved for almost 10 years. I think it was 9 years ago that I went through the program to become a certified human design consultant.
And what got you excited? What got you excited about it?
Well, my daughter was in Hollywood at the time. We were living in Washington, D.C., and she came across a group of people that she had met that were into this, and she went and had her human design done, and she said, you know, you've got to really experience this. So I did, through a person by the name of Shatan Parkin, who wrote the first major book on the subject. And then when we moved to California, I went through the program with him and became a consultant. And I was really enthusiastic about it because when I learned about my human design, it explained so much about me and what I was all about. It just made my life a lot easier and a lot more stress-free.
Yeah, and so talk about that a little bit. So could you like shed the light on a little bit for the viewers? What was your life before, and what was it like after?
Well, before, I knew that I was good in working with companies. I had worked for over 100 companies in their IT areas, helping them with their strategy for essentially getting better value out of their information technology investments. And the main customer that I had at the time was the World Bank, and I had worked with them for some years and helped them through the year 2000, which was a big, major problem for major banks in getting that century shift. And
a big scare for nothing.
That's right. But it was actually something that the World Bank had to change. They had to get a whole new set of software to support them for that. But anyway, that was another story.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I was effective in doing that. And so then when I had my human design done, I discovered that I was fairly open in terms of my human design, as you are. You are very open, and I am as well, which meant that I had received conditioning from other people, took on their characteristics, and in my case it was mainly my father. And once I saw that and saw how and why I was able to work well with large companies, then that explained a lot for me. And it turned out that my human design said that I had something called the channel of mutation, which meant that I was going through constant change in my life. And when I think back on it now, I have lived in 22 different places, and one thing after another, and these changes came out of nowhere, and it just explained it. So when a change comes, it doesn't bother me. It's my channel of mutation which is doing that for me. And I also discovered that I was living in 7-year cycles as well, and that's certainly true, because when I went to get my PhD at Carnegie Mellon, normally when you get a PhD after taking a bachelor's degree, you can do it in 3 years or so. But for me, for various reasons, my advisor was sick, and so I had to do some teaching in the meantime and so on. And finally got it. And then later on, when I discovered I lived my life in 7-year cycles, I thought back and said, well, how long did it take to get my education? And it took me exactly 21 years. And that just really, opened the door for me in terms of what this is all about. So those are a couple of examples.
So are you really saying? So I'm just attempting to read between the lines here. So are you really saying that since this is kind of imprinted, what I'm hearing is it's imprinted in our DNA?
That's correct.
So are you saying that there are basically two ways then to go through life: resisting that imprint, or not resisting it and flow with it?
There's a couple of things. First of all, the imprint really happens in two at 2 times. It happens before the time of birth, and that imprint describes your unconscious self. So you're not aware of what it does for you until you experience things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other imprint is at the time of birth. And so both of those affect your DNA, and it then determines your characteristics for your entire lifetime. Now, when you have an open, what we call an open design, it means that you are very flexible, and people can affect you. They can influence you, and you're
like
one
a
of
sponge.
those.
You're like a sponge, right?
You're like a sponge, and you can pick up the characteristics of other people, which may not be you. And we call it in human design, we call it the not self, and that can happen. And so when people understand their human design and realize that they may be living their not self, it really opens their eyes and says, "Holy smoke, this is not me," and that really makes things a lot easier for them in their lives. Other people have a lot of definition in their human design, and they tend to be fairly inflexible. They just operate one way throughout their life, and it's difficult to influence them in any sort of way. So you get those two extremes. And it's not as if anything's right or wrong, it's just simply who you are, and it's simply affected by the imprint you get at the time of birth.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, we're actually going to go into looking at some examples. We're going to look at my own examples, which I'm sure our network is going to just enjoy. They're going to get to look more deeper into the founder of Conscious Evolution Media, which I don't mind. I don't have any secrets. And then we're going to look at Donald Trump, which I think is pretty awesome because his show is coming back in January of 2015, and I really quite enjoy his show. It teaches me a lot about how to be not conscious, and displays a lot of that to me and for me, and it's entertaining. So before we do that, let's talk just a little bit about how does this benefit individuals just a little bit more deeper, and how does it benefit business? You know, I'm into now the model of conscious corporation, and this probably fits in beautifully. Since I did a session with you, and I don't remember, Doc, when I did that, to be honest. But it doesn't really matter. You may find this really intriguing and interesting, but I've been called to go out to corporate America and see how I can implement and have a meaningful change in an industry that's a very, very, very strict and doing business the old way type of an industry, and that's the finance industry. And I've got a contract with a fairly large financial company with over 2,000 people and 350 offices nationwide. But I am implementing these new things at a local branch here in Denver, and I am having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, right. Well, for you, the main feature in your human design is the fact that you are a born entrepreneur. You're a natural for business. You have what is known as the channel of enterprise. And so you just have this natural ability of instinctively looking at patterns and seeing patterns in people and in organizations, and then finding a way to provide value to them, to help them move along. And it's a very heartfelt energy that you put out there, and they see that, and they see that you're really into it because you're putting your heart into it, literally. And then they will go along with that because you're very influential in that sense. And you also don't fool around. You like to get right to it. You know.
I get right into it. Yeah.
You get right
so here,
into
let's show the viewers maybe what this looks like. So this is what mine looks like, and you will explain this in just a little bit. Maybe not in as much detail as you did with me, because that took over an hour. And here it is Donald Trump's, And what's
Right.
interesting about it is that when I first looked at both of these and put them side by side, of course, the first thing I noticed is that Donald's human design is much more colorful than mine.
Right. Yeah. He's better defined, shall we say. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how would you like to go about explaining a little bit more about how how this system works and why is it that works, and how do you provide your consulting service in terms of how you explain what this imprinting is, and then how people would, once you explain it, what people would have to understand in the way of being that it would make a difference in their lives.
Yeah. Well, just to quickly go through what it's all about. Essentially, I mentioned that people have two imprints. They get one at 3 months before they're born, and it provides a definition that on the chart corresponds to those red lines. And then there's another, and I said it's unconscious. They're not aware of what's going on there. Then they receive the other imprint at the time of birth, which corresponds with the black lines, and they're very aware of that. It describes their conscious self. And those centers that you see in the sheet are known as energy centers. Now, most people have heard of the chakra system out of India a couple of thousand years ago.
Oh, sure.
In the chakra system, there are 7 energy centers. We are now 9-centered beings, and human design describes those 9 centers, and that's what you see there. And they're connected by channels that we call channels, with gates at the other end of it, and those are lit up and colored by the imprints that you get. And that means that they're defined. Now, in your case, you have one channel, which is connecting 2 centers, and when that happens, you get a consistent energy across that channel. And because there's a consistent energy.
Hang on. I want to make sure we understand. So when you say defined, does that mean that we're not flexible?
It means that you that you have a consistency about it. It's there. It's very consistent, and you have consistent energy in what you do with your willpower and your ego. It's very, very consistent, and it's also in you. The way you feel physically is pretty consistent. So you'll wake up in the morning and you'll pretty much feel the same way as you did the day before physically. Okay, and you also have some instinct and intuition, which comes through that channel connecting those 2 things. Otherwise, everything in you has been conditioned by other people. So the characteristics that you have, the way you talk, the way you operate, the way you deal with people, has probably been conditioned by your parents as you grew up, and then it maybe changed over time as you associated with other people. And what tends to happen is that you collect what we call wisdom in each of those experiences, and then you live according to that wisdom that you have. And so, since you have a fairly open design yourself, you want to be around good people. You want to have good people in your life. Otherwise, things may go awry. And so that's an important concept to get as part of this.
In fact, the people that are not good people, they run away from me. It's like I have a repellent. They just disappear as fast as they can.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. They can see that. Now you have what we call an undefined root, which is the bottom one, which means that you can stress over things. So stress is part of your life. And you need to kind of see that, accept that, and just know that it's there so that you can...
Well, Donald has that.
Yeah, Donald has that as well. He has a very open route, but he has...
he covers it up real well.
He covers it up very well. And both of you have what we call undefined selves. In other words, your sense of who you are is not consistent. It's probably been taken on characteristics by other people, by your parents particularly. And his is totally open, so he is a mystery, even to himself. And who knows who he really is. And he can be variable, he can change as that goes on and so forth. Now, with him, the most important line to understand about him is the channel which connects that red triangle on the thing, which is the heart center. That's what you have defined.
Mm-hmm.
To the brown square above that, that's the throat center, that's the center for expression and also doing things, manifestation. He has a channel connecting it called the money line, which means that he has this natural ego and willpower to create material assets in his life. And it's money, and in his case, property, big time. And
where's my money line?
You have half of it. You've got half of it, and you've probably been building the other half throughout your life, and that other half has to do with controlling the material assets in your life. And you've probably been building it. It takes time, but it's there. But he's got the whole thing, and when you got the whole thing, you can't be stopped. You just go for it, and as he has done, and just done what he had to create material success, and he's now a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
The other famous person with the money line like this is Rupert Murdoch, who.
So where would this be? Let me just show this again. In terms of.
The money line. The money line is that connection between the brown square that's third from the top, and the red triangle, which is down to the bottom right of it. It's the 4521 they call it.
Okay.
It's called the money line.
Yeah, I think it's this one.
Yeah. Right. That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And mine is half
now
full.
The other thing, yeah, that yours is half full. That's right.
Yeah.
The other thing about him is that he's always busy, constantly busy, active all the time. That's because there's a defined connection between the throat, where he can do things, and the sacral, which is that red square defined in him, which means that he can just put whatever energy it takes into doing what he commits to. And so he's constantly busy. And in fact, I follow him on Twitter, and I've never seen anybody have more tweets out there than him. He's got at least, I don't know, I'd say about almost 10 an hour that you see on Twitter from him. And it's because he's just constantly thinking about things and putting them out there. Okay. The other thing about Donald Trump is that he has a channel called the channel of connecting, which means that he is a magnet for personal relationships. They can be interpersonal, somebody that he's involved with romantically, or it can be with business. And he people just want to be associated with him and connect with him with this. All right. And so those are the main features with him. He also comes up with ideas all the time about, opinions, one opinion after another, and that's what you see on Twitter. And the reason for that is that there's a connection there between the green triangle near the top and the throat center. The green triangle is known as the mind center. And in him it's defined, which means his mind is never shut down. It's always active. He wakes up in the morning, his mind is going, and it never stops all day long.
Very interesting. My mind is actually quiet a lot.
Right. Yeah. and it's right there. Exactly right.
It's right there. Mine is the opposite. Yeah.
Yours is the opposite. Yeah. So that's sort of the major characteristics of Donald Trump, and he just does what it takes to create this material prosperity in his life, and it's right in his DNA. It's always been there, and it defines him.
Yeah, well, he certainly does have it down. So, what's a man like that do for the next 30 years? Just the same?
He'll be doing that as long as he wants to. He's gotten into a lot of different parts to that. All the golf courses that he's set up and managed, and of course with his television show, that's another part of it. But it's all part of him and getting his name out there and people seeing him for who he is. The other thing about him is what we call the profile, which is essentially taking a look at him, you know, from a distance. And what we see is somebody who creates a very stable life. He has this need to create stability in his life, and he tries all kinds of different things to make it happen. And he will try something. It may not work. He'll drop it like a hot potato and go on. And some people call this profile that he has, it's called the 1-3. It's just like a cat on a hot tin roof, and that's kind of what he's like. But he's always looking for this incredible stability in his life. And well, the other thing about this,
well, how much more stability does he need?
Well,
he's already got it.
That's right, but for him it never ends. You know, it's always there. That drive is there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to be Donald Trump. Cost is too high.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the main features of your human design turn out to be your human design type, which is the key thing. And there's 5 different types, and you are what is known as a projector, which means that you are always putting out there, here I am, Steve, here's what I do, come and see what I'm all about, and invite me to come along and work with you or be with you, and we'll see where we go with that, right? And projectors need to wait to be invited to be successful and enjoy what they do, and you're one of those. And of course, to be recognized, you need to be good at something. You need to have mastery in your life, and you've developed that mastery, and so then you are invited because of that mastery. Now the other projector I think that I should mention while I'm talking about it is Barack Obama, the President of the United States. He needs to be recognized. And how does he get his recognition? He campaigns almost 100% of the time. And that's what you see all the time. He gets recognition for being out there and making speeches and talking to people and raising money and all that kind of thing.
He's getting a lot of negative recognition. Does that work also?
Well, if you do things the wrong way, that's right. But he is also a projector. Now, Donald Trump, on the other hand, is what is known as a manifesting generator, which is another type, which means that he is here to create things, to work, to make things happen, and to do them his way. He wants them to be done his way. And it's just a consistency that's there, and he's totally busy all the time in making that move forward with himself. Okay? But he needs to respond initially to be successful. And once he gets that initial response, then he can go ahead and make it work. So that's the human design type. The next one is what is known as your life strategy. And I explained what that was. For you, is to wait to be invited, and for him, it's to respond and then to let people know what he's doing so he can complete what he starts out to do. And the third aspect is what is known as your authority, which is your decision-making process. Now, for you, you are fairly open, but you do have a defined, what we call a defined spleen center, which means that your authority, your decision-making process is based upon your instinct, your intuition. What do you intuit as being the right way to do things, and then if you follow your intuition and it's an immediate thing, then you can go ahead and make the right decision. Okay, and I explained that to you last August.
Works every time.
Yeah, and it turns out that 70% of the population have to use a gut feel for making their decisions. 70%. So most people have to use a gut feel. That's not you. It works for me. I have to do that, but for you, it's instinctive. And then the other, I guess, the other thing is what is known as your life theme. That is kind of the what's going on for your life. What's your life all about from the time you're born all the way through. And for you, it's what it's called rulership. So when you have this, you're a natural leader who's always influencing others by listening to what is needed and preparing, and then finding a way to make things better for them. And so people see this influence that you have. It's a very strong thing in you, and that's why they call it rulership, because they see that you have something to offer, and you set it up in such a way that people can accept it and make it work for them. So that is your life theme. So those are the major factors that come into your human design. And there's a lot of other detail about all the different channels and gates and everything, but that's another thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now we talked about also the business aspect of this human design and
Yes.
how to use it for business. Let's
Yes.
talk about that a little bit.
Okay. That was an add-on to human design that came along in the year 2006 through a person by the name of Richard Rudd. And he came up with the business side of it in terms of 4 different aspects. The first one is your business talent. That is, what are you good at in a business? What makes you successful potentially because you're good at what that's all about. And for you, for example, it's philanthropy. You are good at helping people, getting people get value from what you do, and that's your talent. You really make things happen for people in a way that they feel that they've gotten something useful from you, and that they just feel better about their lives with that. All right?
But usually people think of philanthropy as people giving money to causes. Like
right.
you would think Donald would be would be something like that in business, because he gives money away all the time for different causes.
Yeah, but his talent is actually marketing. He gets out there. I mean, you take a look at what he's done with all those golf courses. The marketing is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And all the stuff he's done in real estate has been successful for the most part because he's such has such a great talent for marketing, right? The second aspect, and by the way, mine is strategy, and that's what I've been doing for all my clients for all these years, is helping them with their IT strategy. So that's what the talent is all about. The second aspect is your culture. What size and type of organization do you feel comfortable in working in? And for you, it's what we call empire. In other words, it doesn't matter. It can be large, small. That doesn't matter. You're comfortable working with any size organization, and you can be effective in doing that. And for Donald, it's what we call system, whereby it's not only any size of organization, but it can be broken. Donald can fix things easily and feel comfortable in doing it. If he comes across an organization or a company that he wants to acquire and it's broken some way, he'll find a way to fix it and feel good about doing that. The third aspect is what is known as your brand. And that means the characteristics that people see in you when you're doing your thing in business. For you, it's heart. People see you putting your heart into it. It's a heartfelt energy that you're putting into whatever you're doing and helping people. And when you're doing your work with people, other people look at it and say, "Oh yeah, he's a very heartfelt individual." For Donald, it's what we call boldness. He's very bold about what he does. People don't expect it sometimes when he does what he does. He's just very, very comes out of nowhere sometimes with what he does.
Like a bulldozer.
That's right. Exactly.
Get out of the way.
Get out of the way, especially as a
Donald is
manifest.
coming. Get out of the way.
That's right. Exactly. Yep. And there's a lot of people asking him to run for president, I guess, because they want that now or something. I don't know.
Well, he could probably fire all the senators. He would say, "Let's clean house. I can fix this."
Yep, that's right. If anybody can do it, he can. And the fourth aspect is what is known as your pearl. That it's what underlies everything that you do in business. And for you, it's simplicity. You want your business to be very straightforward, no frills. This is the way it is, and you know that that's the way it has to be successful and to last for the longer term. And so you just carry that particular direction, and that's what you stay with. All right. And for Donald, his pearl is celebrity. He can be very well known in doing what he's doing, and guess what? He is a celebrity, big time. And he works with celebrities all the time, as you
yeah.
know,
and I can't believe that, Doc. I can't believe that he gets away with what he gets away with all these celebrities. Yeah. They'll just bow down to him, you know. It's like,
that's
dude.
Right. That's right.
What are you guys doing?
That's right. Yeah, he's the ultimate celebrity, and it's right in his human design. Exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing what he gets away with. Absolutely amazing. And he embarrasses them many times.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and they don't care. Yeah, that's right.
It's almost like he has. Is he a Leo by any chance?
No, he's not.
No, he's not.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
He's not. He's not. It's his birthday is the 14th of June, so I'm not sure what that sign is. It's yeah. Anyway, that's what he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So, let's. I think we've talked about this long enough that if we raised anybody's interest in terms of our touch move that inspired some people about what could this do for them or for their organization, it's time to let them know how they can get a hold of you, or how do you provide the services that you provide. Maybe let's talk about that a little bit, Doc.
Well, I guess the main thing is that the services that I provide are explained, and contacts are made through my website. And the website is www.humandesignforbusiness.com. And that's the way people, and I'm in Australia, but I have an LA phone number, which is on the website. And people can call me on the LA phone number, and it's a free call. So I use Magic Jack for that, and so that works out very well. And when I do the sessions for people, I generally use Skype, because Skype is worldwide, and it's both audio and video, and when people connect with Skype, then it becomes a very personal connection, and people really get a lot out of the session when that happens.
And how do you help organizations?
What I do with them, I have a service which is connected to a database that I have created. I don't know of anybody else that has it. I think it's unique in the world, where I work with organizations to look at what they would like to achieve, what goals they would like to make, and I use what is known as the breakthrough strategy, which I've been using for many, many years, ever since the early 70s, which is a very effective way of making things better in companies. And so I help them with using a breakthrough strategy, and as part of that, I implement human design, where we take a look at the business characteristics in their human design and organize them in such a way that they fill the proper roles with what they're designed to be. And then I produce reports which show how people are set up and what they do, and people find that helpful in organizing their businesses so that they can move it forward more quickly.
Well, this sounds very interesting to me, because I'm just imagining, if you take a look at a corporate organization, senior management. Let's say you just look at the very top tier, the CEO, um, the VPs, and everybody has their role. Marketing, sales, production, HR, whatever. And when you do this for the first time with them individually, do you normally find that people are in the right career? Are they doing the right jobs, or how often does it not connect?
Most of the time they do. Most of the time they're following what their talent is all about, because that they know that works for them. And so they may try different aspects, in different directions, but then they keep coming back to what works for them. And generally it follows their design. Now sometimes people live what I call the not self. In other words, when they are conditioned by others and they have fairly open designs, and they become almost like somebody else, not themselves.
They're pretending,
and they're living that way, and they know that it's not quite right, but that's the way they have been conditioned to live. And so things don't necessarily work that well for them. So once they understand their human design and see what they're really all about, they can make that shift, and it really makes a difference, and their potential then can come out. Yeah.
And I'm also curious about, when you work with a group, do you make it known with the entire group about what each person's individual human design is?
Yes.
And how does that change the group interactions and the way they work as a team?
And they get this. The main thing is their awareness. They get the personal awareness, then they get the corporate awareness, and then they know that if it's this issue, I need to talk to this person, because that person is really effective in handling things like that. And then it kind of changes the structure somewhat to more closely fit their human designs. And that's what I've noticed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is that because people get more clarity?
Yes, they get clarity. They get more awareness of who they are, how they operate, and how they can be more effective. In other words, getting themselves more into the flow, which is really what this is all about.
What it's all about, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. Very good stuff, by the way. I mean, these are the things I'm asking these questions, Doug, because this is what I'm doing right now.
well, there's a
I'm doing it without your system.
Yeah, right. There's another couple of things that people should be aware of with human design as well, and that is children. Because if you know the human design of children, then it makes a big difference. Now, a good example is my granddaughter. I have a granddaughter that was born last October, a year ago, actually, in October. And when she was born, I got a phone call from her father, my son, and said, "Dad, Audrey was just born." And I said, "Oh, what time?" And he gave me the time of her birth, and I said, "Okay, hang on." And I went and I got her chart, and I sent it to him, and she was born less than an hour, and her father knew exactly what she was going to be when she grew up.
Wow.
So that is a very effective way for people to help raise their children. That once they know their human designs, they know how to raise them, how to influence them in a way that they can be very effective in their lives.
So how do we explain free choice then? If our destiny is predetermined, how do we explain free choice?
Well, it's not predetermined. Your destiny is not predetermined. It's the potential characteristics are right there in your DNA. And if you take advantage of those and know what they are, life becomes a lot easier. You get into the flow much easier. It doesn't mean that you're totally defined and everything has got to be fixed in that way. No, it's just that these are the basic things that help you with your flow of life and your life potential.
Gotcha. All right.
So, and the other thing to be aware of with human design is what we call the composite, and this is where couples have their human designs done. And what happens is when you look at how they connect with each other in their composite, it shows you how they support each other energetically and why they are together. And when couples see that, they really understand more about their relationship and how to make the relationship work better, perhaps, because they see how they're influencing each other in that respect. It's a very powerful asset that they can have.
Well, I found just in my previous history is that couples mostly come together for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
and that's a proven fact because the divorce rate is, up in the 54%.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And yet, on the other hand, couples sometimes come together because there's a magnetic connection, what we call electromagnetic connection, which draws them together, and the sparks might fly. But then, after having lived together for a couple of years, they realize, no, that's not really what it's all about, and that can happen too.
So this could be very, very powerful to get clarity on before they get married.
Yeah, yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, very interesting. That's very helpful. So I wanted to run this by you because I find this to be so interesting. You were talking about kids, and I have 5 grandkids, and I'm just absolutely amazed how little kids, automatically know when you're being authentic. Like they just have what word do I want to use? It's like they just know when you're being the truth.
Yeah.
And they know
Right.
when you're pretending, and they're not interested really to be with you when you're pretending.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And it's very easy to engage with them, and they'll engage with you when you're being your true self. And I thought that's another very important thing to bring up because.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. I do all the preventative maintenance to make this not happen, but guess what? I don't have the control. I don't have the control that Donald Trump has.
Yeah. Right.
So, wow, very interesting. So tell me a little about this because I'm still fascinated with Donald Trump. Tell me a little bit about the green stuff. Why is all that green on the top? Right. That's it.
Yeah.
That's not the throat.
That's the mind center.
It's the mind center. Why is it all green?
It's the center of mental awareness because it's connected to another center with a defined channel, which means that there's a consistent energy across the channel, which means that there's a consistent energy in the centers themselves, and that's why they're lit up. So I explained that about him. That's what his mind is active all the time, never shuts down.
Okay, got it.
He's thinking about something all the time when it's lit up.
And the same thing true with all the others, because he has a lot of them that are lit up. All of these.
That's right. Yeah, he does.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them.
5 of them. That's right. Yeah.
And I only have 2. And I go, what's up with that? he's got more things lit up and more money than I do.
Yeah. Well, he's got some more definition there. That's right, and it's driving his life to a large extent. And let's put it this way: he's not as flexible as you are. When you have a fairly open design like you do, you're very flexible, and you like to get things done in a hurry. And also, when you have a defined heart like you have, you can put a value on things pretty easily. You know what something is worth for the most part when you have a defined heart. And he has a defined heart, and so guess what? He knows what things are worth, and that's why he's been so successful, especially in real estate.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. All right, so I know that I just wanted to mention to the viewers that you also do a blog, which I get a copy of all the time, and it's very fascinating. Depending on who you actually do a human design blog on, and you do a lot of famous people, which I think is interesting. So depending on who you do, I'll go and check it out, and every time I read your blog. You're right on. So do you want to talk about that a little bit, just in case if people are interested?
Yeah, it's part of my website. I create a new blog every week. It's generally set up every Friday, and I take a look and see what celebrities or what famous people are in the news, and I try to pick one that looks like they might be of interest and look at their design, and then if it looks good, I put it on my website as the current blog. And I like to. Human design is such a great tool for understanding more about people, and that's why I try to do the blogs in such a way that it comes across that people that see, oh yeah, this is why this person is the way they are. And I think the most recent one I put up there was Kirk Douglas, and the reason I did that
I couldn't believe that he's 92, number one. When I read that,
he's 98.
He's 98? Oh my God!
98.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Right. And the reason I put him up there is that about 2 weeks ago, somebody published something saying he was dead, that he died, which was wrong, and they had to retract it. So that's why I put him up there. And then the thing is, years ago when we lived in California in Hollywood, my daughter was involved with the Oscars, so we were able to go to the Oscar ceremonies once a year quite often, and I still remember seeing Kirk Douglas there at the Oscars, and he was just recovering from a stroke that he had, and it was really very, very hard to see, in him, and that was back in the late 90s, and so here it is, 15 years later, and he's still going strong, and he'll be 98 next week.
Was he in Ben-Hur?
I think he was, yeah, and but the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is the one that I remember most about him, and
yeah,
he was really
yeah,
good.
he's a very, very good actor, a fantastic actor, and wow, yeah. It's amazing. All right, so. What would you like to leave the viewers with in terms of what's the major top 3 benefits that they would get if they would do a session with you?
The top 3 benefits would be to get an awareness of what they're all about, what they're really designed to do. And that awareness helps them get into more of the flow of life in a much easier way to deal with stress or understand how to avoid it.
Number one killer in this country.
Right. Exactly.
Next to sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. It's up there. That's right. And so that's one of the key factors. Another one is to see what their life potential is all about, especially for younger people. What they should be doing to focus on in their lives to get the best out of it, so that they feel like they're in the flow with that. And the third thing is to use it as an opportunity to get to know people that they're close to. Whether it's a personal relationship, friend, whatever it is, it's very effective in that way. And in fact, on my website, I think the 3rd blog I have on there is still Amal and George Clooney, and why they're together, and why they were married. And George You know, I mean, George is a magnet for relationships in Hollywood,
Yeah.
and has been for years. And
It took
there's a
forever for
reason
him
why
to get
that.
married, right?
Exactly, and he said at one point he never would, but he did, and that explains why.
Definitely a playboy in my book.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's been really fantastic. So, Dr. Barry Foss, I want to thank you very much for spending this wonderful and informative hour on Conscious Evolution Media Network. I think what you do is very unique. I don't think I could find another person within the next week that does what you do.
No.
So it's not like
Right.
you're definitely not a commodity.
Right.
So
No.
I hope that a lot of our viewers, you know, either with the live show or with the replays, will be touched, moved, and inspired by many things
Right.
that you presented here, and take you
Right.
up on your offer. So let's give them your website one more time.
It's www.humandesignbusiness.com.
All right, very good. So thank you very much. Is there
Very
anything else
welcome.
you'd like
Glad
to
to
say?
join you.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
I think that summarizes it. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. This is what a conscious hour feels like and looks like.
Yeah. Very good.
5 minutes. Okay. Thank you so much. Everybody have a
Okay.
wonderful weekend, and you know, we're getting into the holiday season, and we're going to be off the air for the last couple of weeks of the month, but you know, we'll be back January 1st as always, or 2nd. Thank you so much, and
You're very welcome.
see you guys next week. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.